When you think about the most advanced technologies humanity has ever built, rockets, artificial intelligence, nuclear reactors, it's easy to feel like we've come a long way. But here's the shocking truth. The single most complex, powerful machine we know of isn't built in a lab. It's sitting inside your skull. The human brain. 3 pounds of tissue, billions of neurons, trillions of connections. It runs your entire body, creates your thoughts, generates your dreams, and stores your memories. And yet, despite centuries of study, the brain remains a mystery that slips through our fingers the moment we think we've grasped it. Consider this. Scientists can map galaxies light years away, track black holes bending spacetime, and predict the behavior of subatomic particles. But when it comes to explaining why you feel joy, or how a single thought even exists, we hit a wall. The very essence of what makes you cannot be pinned down to wires and chemicals. Neuroscientists often compare studying the brain to exploring a dark, endless ocean with just a candle in hand. Every new discovery reveals more questions than answers. For example, we know neurons communicate through electrical signals and chemical messengers, but that alone doesn't explain the experience of a memory, or why one scent can flood you with emotion. Even the basic act of thinking is still a puzzle. We know which parts of the brain light up on a scan, but not why consciousness emerges from those sparks. It's like watching a computer screen flicker and trying to guess the story being typed on it, without ever seeing the code. The brain is not just complicated, it may be unknowable. And that thought terrifies many scientists. Because if we can't fully understand the organ that defines our reality, then what else? One of the strangest things about the brain is how it hides its complexity behind simplicity. On the surface, we act like we understand it. You touch something hot, your brain tells you to pull back. You hear music, and your brain lets you enjoy it. Simple, right? But beneath that simplicity lies a labyrinth that no map can fully explain. Think of this. The brain contains about 86 billion neurons. Each neuron can form thousands of connections to others, resulting in a network more complex than every star in our galaxy combined. If the brain's connections were laid out end to end, they would stretch for hundreds of thousands of miles, long enough to circle the Earth multiple times. And that's inside one human head. But here's the real twist. Even though we can measure the brain's electricity, track its chemicals, and even predict certain reactions, none of it explains the core mystery: subjective experience. Why do you feel pain instead of just detecting damage? Why do you feel love instead of just recognizing a pattern of behavior? These are questions science has no answer for. Some researchers have even admitted that the brain may never be understood the way other organs are. You can dissect the heart and know how it pumps blood. You can study the lungs and know how they move oxygen. But the brain doesn't just move chemicals, it creates conscious reality. And then comes the most unsettling thought: if the brain defines our reality, what happens if it's tricking us? What if our perception of the world is only a carefully crafted illusion, generated to keep us functional? Some scientists believe this may be true, that what you see, hear, and feel isn't reality at all, but a virtual world designed by your brain for survival. So here's the chilling question. If the universe outside is stranger than we can imagine, and the brain itself is manipulating what we see, can we ever truly know what's real? Throughout history, people have tried to explain the mysteries of the brain with whatever tools they had. Ancient Egyptians believed thoughts came from the heart, not the brain. Early philosophers argued that the mind was a separate soul, something beyond biology. Today, even with advanced brain scans and artificial intelligence, we're still circling around the same riddle. Where does the self come from? Take modern neuroscience. We can see which parts of the brain activate when you laugh, cry, or remember your childhood. But seeing those brain scans is like looking at a city from an airplane at night. You see the lights turning on, but you have no idea what conversations are happening inside the buildings. The real story, the lived experience, remains hidden. This gap between what science can measure and what we actually experience is sometimes called the hard problem of consciousness. It's not about explaining how neurons fire, it's about explaining why those firings create feelings, awareness, and an inner voice. Why is there something it's like to be you? Why aren't we just biological robots, reacting without awareness? And this is where the brain becomes darker than space. Because with space, at least we can see galaxies, stars, and planets, even if they're far away. With the brain, the most important part, the actual experience of being alive, is invisible. No machine, no microscope, no equation has ever been able to capture it. Some scientists go as far as saying consciousness might be something we'll never fully unlock. Imagine that the very thing that makes life meaningful could be permanently beyond our understanding. That's a thought as terrifying as any black hole or cosmic mystery. And so, as we leave this first chapter, one truth becomes clear. The brain is not just an organ. It's a hidden universe. One that might be holding secrets so strange, so profound, that even space itself seems simple in comparison. When you close your eyes and think back to your childhood, what do you see? Maybe a birthday party, the smell of your grandmother's cooking, or your first day at school. These memories feel solid, like snapshots stored in the brain. But here's the unsettling truth. Memory is not a perfect recording. It's a construction, a story your brain tells you. And sometimes, it lies. Scientists once believed memories were like files saved on a computer. But modern research reveals something darker. Every time you remember an event, your brain rewrites it. The memory isn't retrieved, it's rebuilt. That means each recall can subtly change the details, until the memory you know as true may be nothing like what actually happened. Think about it. Have you ever argued with someone about a shared experience, and both of you were convinced your version was correct? That isn't stubbornness, it's biology. Both brains are protecting their own version of reality. But the rabbit hole goes deeper. Entire groups of people can share false memories, something called the Mandela effect. Millions of people around the world remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, when in reality, he lived until 2013. Others swear they remember the children's book spelled as the Berenstain Bears, not the Berenstain Bears. How can so many people misremember the same thing? Is it just human error, or something stranger? Memory isn't just fragile, it's dangerous. Courts have convicted people based on eyewitness testimony, only for DNA evidence to later prove those witnesses were wrong. Their memories felt real, but reality said otherwise. So here's the chilling thought: if your memories can't be trusted, what part of your life is actually real? How much of your identity, your joys, your traumas, your very sense of who you are, might be nothing more than a glitch in the brain's storytelling machine? If memory can change with every recall, then how much of your past is real? And how much is fiction created by your own brain? The unsettling truth is that your brain is less like an archive and more like a movie director, constantly editing, rewriting, and even fabricating scenes. Psychologists have shown just how easily memories can be manipulated. In one famous experiment, researchers convinced ordinary people that, as children, they had once been lost in a shopping mall. The event never happened. But after a few sessions of suggestion, many participants swore they remembered it clearly. The panic, the details, even the clothing they wore. Their minds had created a memory from nothing. This isn't rare. Studies suggest false memories happen to nearly everyone. Sometimes it's harmless, misremembering a conversation or a detail in a story. But other times, it can reshape lives. Imagine carrying a painful memory of a betrayal or humiliation that, in truth, never occurred. The emotions are real, the scars are real, but the event itself might be a phantom. The brain doesn't store memories like files on a hard drive. It rebuilds them every time you recall them, like pulling a book off a shelf and rewriting the ending before putting it back. Over decades, that means your most cherished or most painful memories might be unrecognizable compared to what really happened. And here's the part that feels almost sinister. Sometimes, your brain changes memories for survival. It edits the past to protect you, to soften trauma, or to make your story make sense. But if your own brain can trick you for your own good, how can you ever be sure which parts of your life are authentic? The truth is, we live in a world where our brains may be gaslighting us. And if your memories can't be trusted, can your sense of self, the story you tell about who you are, really be trusted either? If our memories can be rewritten by our own minds, what happens when someone else deliberately takes control of them? This is where the dark side of memory truly shows itself. History is filled with chilling examples of memory manipulation. Propaganda, for instance, doesn't just shape opinions, it can rewrite collective memory. Entire populations have been convinced to remember events a certain way, even when the facts tell another story. When repeated enough, lies can start to feel like lived experiences. On a more personal level, psychologists have discovered how vulnerable people are to implanted memories. In controlled experiments, researchers have persuaded volunteers to believe they committed crimes that never happened, shoplifting, even assault. Shockingly, many participants not only believed it but added vivid details, remembering scenes that never existed. Their brains filled in the blanks, painting fiction as fact. And then there's trauma. Survivors of traumatic events sometimes repress memories, only to recall them years later. But here's the disturbing part: not all recovered memories are accurate. Some are genuine. Others are distorted fragments stitched together into a false narrative. The line between healing and hallucination becomes razor thin. This fragility makes memory both a gift and a curse. It allows us to carry love, laughter, and meaning forward in time. But it also leaves us vulnerable to mistakes, to manipulation, and to our own brain's editing tricks. Imagine for a moment, what if the most defining memory of your life, your first love, your deepest heartbreak, your proudest achievement, wasn't real? What if it was nothing more than a fabrication, carefully sculpted by the brain to give your life a story? That's the terrifying possibility. Memory feels like the foundation of identity, but in reality, it's built on shifting sand. If we can't even trust our own past, then how fragile is the self we believe we are? Close your eyes for a moment. You're not looking at the world, you're experiencing it. You can feel your body in space, hear the faint sounds around you, maybe even notice a thought drifting across your mind. This awareness, this inner movie of life, is called consciousness. And here's the shocking truth: no one knows what it actually is. For centuries, philosophers and scientists have asked the same haunting question: why does being alive feel like something? A rock exists. A tree grows. But neither has an inner life, or at least, not one we can prove. Humans, on the other hand, don't just process the world. We experience it. We don't just register light hitting our eyes. We see sunsets and dream of galaxies. We don't just detect vibrations. We hear music and feel moved to tears. The mystery is so baffling that it's been given a name: the hard problem of consciousness. It asks, why do all the biological processes in the brain, electrical signals, chemical reactions, firing neurons, suddenly give rise to awareness? Why do you feel joy, sorrow, or fear, instead of just reacting like a machine? Neuroscience has answers for the easy problems: how vision works, how sound is processed, how language is structured. But the leap from brain activity to experience remains unexplainable. We can watch brain scans light up when someone eats chocolate, but that tells us nothing about the delicious, personal feeling of tasting it. Some scientists suggest consciousness might not come from the brain at all. Maybe the brain is more like a receiver, tuning into something larger, like a radio picking up invisible signals. Others argue that consciousness could be a fundamental property of the universe itself, like gravity or time, something woven into the fabric of reality. And if that's true, then your mind isn't trapped inside your skull. It could be connected to something infinite, something we can't yet measure. But here's the terrifying twist. If consciousness isn't contained in the brain, then where exactly does you end and the universe begin? To grasp how strange consciousness really is, imagine this. Right now, your brain is locked inside a dark skull. It never actually sees the outside world. Instead, it's trapped with nothing but electrical signals sent through nerves. Yet somehow, from those silent impulses, your brain constructs a vivid movie, full of colors, sounds, smells, and emotions. But what if that movie is not reality at all? Some scientists suggest consciousness might be more like a virtual reality simulation created by the brain to help us survive. In this view, what you see isn't the world as it is. It's the world as your brain wants you to see. For example, colors don't exist outside the brain. They're not out there in space. They're created by your mind interpreting wavelengths of light. Reality might be far stranger and far less colorful than what you experience. Experiments in neuroscience reveal just how fragile our awareness can be. In one famous case, a man named Clive Waring suffered brain damage that destroyed his memory. Every few seconds, he would wake up, convinced it was the first moment of consciousness after being unconscious. He lived in a loop, aware of himself but unable to form a continuous life. His tragedy exposes a chilling truth. Our sense of a stable self is held together by fragile brain processes that can shatter at any time. And then there are out-of-body experiences. Some people under extreme conditions, such as surgery or near-death moments, report floating above their bodies, watching themselves from outside. Are these hallucinations created by a desperate brain? Or glimpses of consciousness existing independently from the physical body? The debate rages on. Some argue the brain generates consciousness entirely, like a machine producing electricity. Others believe the brain is more like an antenna, tapping into a field of awareness that surrounds us all. Both ideas are unsettling. Either your mind is a fragile illusion that dies when your brain does, or it's part of something vast and unknown, far beyond your control. When scientists reach the limits of biology, they begin to look outward, to the universe itself. Could consciousness be more than a product of neurons? Could it be woven into the very fabric of reality? One radical idea is called panpsychism. It suggests that consciousness isn't unique to humans. It might exist in some form everywhere, even in atoms and particles. According to this theory, the universe doesn't just create minds. The universe itself is mind-like. Your awareness is simply a spark of a much larger fire. Another theory is even stranger: quantum consciousness. Some physicists believe the mysteries of the mind could be tied to quantum mechanics, the bizarre rules that govern subatomic particles. In this view, consciousness might emerge from quantum processes inside brain cells. If true, that means your thoughts could be connected to the same strange forces that shape stars, black holes, and the birth of the universe. Then there are near-death experiences, stories of people who clinically die, only to return with memories of tunnels, light, and overwhelming peace. Science often explains these as chemical reactions in a failing brain. But some cases defy easy answers, patients reporting details they couldn't possibly have seen while unconscious. If even one of these accounts is true, it suggests consciousness might survive beyond the body. Of course, skeptics argue we are just fooling ourselves, that the brain is a clever illusionist, tricking us into believing in a soul, when really we are only biology. But here's the paradox. Even if consciousness is an illusion, it's the one illusion you can't deny. You can doubt everything else, the world, the universe, even your own memories. But you cannot doubt that you are experiencing something right now. And maybe that's the darkest secret of all. Consciousness may not just be a mystery science hasn't solved. It may be a mystery that science cannot solve. Something too big, too strange, too infinite for human minds to ever grasp. If the brain is already mysterious in what we know about it, then what about the things it does that defy explanation entirely? Throughout history, there have been glimpses of human minds doing things that seem impossible. Sudden bursts of genius, abilities no training can explain, and senses that stretch beyond logic. These cases force us to ask, what hidden powers might be buried deep inside the brain? Consider the story of savants. These are individuals who, often after a brain injury or in cases of autism, display extraordinary abilities, playing entire symphonies after hearing them once, performing lightning-fast calculations without formal education, or painting landscapes with photographic precision. How can a damaged brain unlock abilities that a healthy brain cannot? Some researchers believe these skills are always present in all of us, hidden beneath layers of filters that the brain normally imposes. In rare cases, those filters break, and the raw power shines through. Then there are cases of acquired savant syndrome, ordinary people who suddenly develop genius-level abilities after accidents. For example, a man hit on the head while swimming woke up with an obsession for math and geometry, eventually creating complex, never-before-seen fractal drawings. Another, after a concussion, became a world-class pianist despite never touching a piano before. Science can't fully explain these transformations. Did the injury somehow rewire the brain? Or did it open a door that was always there? And what about intuition, the eerie feeling of knowing something before it happens? Military studies have documented soldiers who sense danger moments before an ambush, with no logical explanation. Mothers who wake in the middle of the night, knowing their child is in trouble, only to later discover it's true. Are these just coincidences? Or does the brain have hidden channels of perception, beyond the five senses we recognize? The deeper we look, the more unsettling the question becomes. Are we living with only a fraction of our brain's true power, while the rest hides, waiting in the dark? If savants reveal hidden genius locked within the brain, then psychic phenomena push us into even stranger territory. These are the stories that science struggles to categorize. Moments when the mind seems to step outside the boundaries of space and time. Take telepathy, for example, the idea that thoughts can pass directly from one mind to another. While it's often dismissed as science fiction, experiments over the decades have produced results too eerie to ignore. In controlled settings, participants have sometimes described images, shapes, or words being sent to them from another person miles away. The accuracy isn't perfect, but it's consistently higher than chance. Could it be coincidence, or does the brain possess a hidden ability to tune into others like a radio signal? Then there's precognition, the unsettling sense of seeing the future before it happens. Studies in parapsychology suggest people sometimes react to images or events seconds before they occur, as if the brain senses what's coming. Skeptics argue it's flawed research. Yet ordinary people report uncanny moments, dreams that later unfold in real life, gut feelings that save them from accidents, or sudden dread just before tragedy strikes. And what about the possibility of a collective consciousness? Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious, a reservoir of shared human experience and archetypes. Some scientists today compare it to a hidden internet of minds, a network we might tap into without realizing. When strangers across the world have the same dream, or when inventors in different countries create the same discovery at the same time, could it be coincidence or something more? The brain is a fortress of secrets. Most of the time, its doors remain locked. But in rare flashes, through savant abilities, psychic phenomena, or moments of extreme crisis, it feels as though the walls crack open, and something far greater, something beyond explanation, leaks through. If the brain truly can stretch beyond space and time, then what we call reality might only be one layer of a much larger design. When we think of hidden brain powers, we often imagine miracles, sudden genius, psychic connections, or abilities that feel almost magical. But what happens when those powers take a darker turn? When the brain, instead of blessing its owner, unleashes something terrifying? Consider the phenomenon of hallucinations. For some, the brain creates vivid, detailed visions, entire worlds that feel real but exist only inside the mind. These aren't always random chaos. Sometimes, people report seeing the same figures, shadowy beings, whispering voices, even full landscapes. Why would different brains, in different people, generate such eerily similar hallucinations? Is it just a quirk of biology, or a glimpse into something beyond? Then there's split personality disorder, now called dissociative identity disorder. In extreme cases, individuals can switch between multiple identities, each with distinct handwriting, accents, even allergies. One personality might need glasses, while another sees perfectly without them. How can a single brain rewrite its biology depending on who's in control? It suggests the brain isn't just one self. It may be capable of generating entire separate lives within the same body. Even more chilling are the rare cases where brain injuries unlock violent compulsions or supernatural-like experiences. Some individuals, after trauma, suddenly report hearing voices giving them instructions, or feeling as though an external force has taken over their thoughts. Are these just malfunctions of damaged neurons? Or could the brain, in its broken state, be tuning into something we normally can't perceive? And let's not forget sleep paralysis, a condition where the brain wakes up before the body does. Victims describe being pinned down by unseen hands, surrounded by shadow figures, and overwhelmed by pure terror. Cultures across the world tell the same story, even though sufferers are oceans apart. If these were just dreams, why are the experiences so universal? The brain's hidden powers are not always gifts. Sometimes they feel more like curses, whispers from the edge of reality, reminding us that inside our own heads may lurk forces stranger and darker than anything in outer space. We've explored the brain as a mystery, a liar, and even a source of impossible powers. But now we arrive at the darkest possibility of all, the idea that the brain may not be what we think it is. What if it isn't the creator of consciousness, but merely the receiver? Think of a radio. A radio doesn't create music. It receives invisible signals from the air and turns them into sound. If you smash the radio, the music stops, but the broadcast continues, unheard. Some scientists and philosophers believe the brain might work the same way. It doesn't generate your consciousness, it tunes into it. This theory, unsettling as it sounds, could explain some of the strangest mysteries we've encountered. Near-death experiences, for example, might not be hallucinations of a dying brain, but glimpses of awareness continuing after the receiver shuts down. Past life memories reported by children, detailed accounts of lives they couldn't possibly know, could be signals from consciousness that stretches beyond a single lifetime. Even savant syndrome and sudden bursts of genius might be less about neurons rewiring and more about the brain briefly tuning into a deeper stream of knowledge. In this view, human intelligence isn't locked inside our skulls. It's plugged into a much larger network, one that spans across time and space. But here's the chilling twist. If the brain is a receiver, then what exactly are we tuned into? Is it a universal field of awareness, neutral and infinite? Or is it something darker, something we cannot control? If your thoughts, your identity, your very sense of self are borrowed from a vast unknown, then who are you, really? And perhaps most terrifying of all, if the brain is only a receiver, then what happens when the frequency changes? Could another signal take over? Could what you call you be nothing more than a temporary channel in a universe of endless voices? If the brain is a receiver, then it may be more like a door than a machine, a door to something far larger than ourselves. And like any door, it doesn't just let things out, it can also let things in. Throughout history, countless cultures have described states where the mind seems to be overtaken by external forces. Shamans speak of channeling spirits. Ancient texts tell of possession, divine inspiration, or voices from beyond. Today, psychiatrists might call these episodes psychosis or hallucination. But what if those moments are not just the brain breaking down, but the brain tuning into another frequency entirely? Some experiments hint at this unsettling idea. In sensory deprivation tanks, where people float in total darkness and silence, the brain begins to generate vivid visions and voices. Some describe conversations with entities that feel real, as though the mind has slipped sideways into another reality. Similarly, in extreme trauma, soldiers and survivors sometimes report hearing voices guiding them, or sensing a presence that saves them from death. Is it the brain inventing comfort, or tuning into a hidden layer of existence? The scariest part? The brain can be manipulated. Subtle electrical stimulation in certain brain regions can create the feeling of being watched, or trigger visions of shadowy figures. This means our sense of reality, what we see, feel, and believe, is fragile, malleable, and disturbingly easy to bend. If a few sparks in the brain can conjure an entire presence, then what does that say about the figures people meet in near-death experiences, or the voices whispering during sleep paralysis? Maybe they're illusions. Or maybe our brains, in rare cracks of perception, glimpse something we're not meant to see. Something waiting just beyond the static. And if the brain really is a doorway, the question is, who, or what, might be on the other side? The deeper we go, the harder it becomes to see the brain as just a biological organ. Every mystery, savant genius, near-death visions, psychic flashes, hallucinations that overlap across cultures, points to a possibility too big to ignore. The brain may be a gateway to something far greater and far darker than we can comprehend. If that's true, then perhaps our entire sense of self is an illusion. The I you feel inside your head, the voice narrating your life, may only be a mask. A fragile construct built by the brain to keep you functional while shielding you from the full, overwhelming reality beyond. If those shields were to break, even for a moment, what would we see? A timeless expanse of pure consciousness, or an abyss filled with entities we were never meant to meet? Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. Some claim consciousness is proof of the divine, a spark of infinity inside us. Others fear it's a trap, a way the universe uses us to observe itself. But modern neuroscience still can't answer the most basic question: why do we feel like someone at all? Machines can process information. Computers can calculate faster than any human. Yet none of them feel. Why, then, do we? Here lies the brain's darkest secret. It might not belong to us. It might belong to something larger, something that uses the fragile stage of human life to express itself. In this view, we are not creators of thought. We are vessels. Temporary flickers in a vast, unknowable current. And if that's true, then death may not be the end. It may simply be the moment the brain stops receiving, when the mask falls away, and we are forced to face whatever lies on the other side. Perhaps that's why the brain feels darker than space. Space is empty, silent, indifferent. But the brain hides something alive. Something watching. Something waiting. On one hand, it's a miracle of evolution, a 3-pound organ that controls thought, memory, creativity, and life itself. On the other, it's a labyrinth of secrets that even our best science can't fully map. We've seen how the brain lies to us, hiding truths and rewriting memories. We've explored its hidden powers, where genius appears overnight and psychic phenomena defy logic. And we've followed its darkest trails, hallucinations, near-death visions, and the chilling possibility that consciousness doesn't come from the brain at all. In the end, one truth stands out: the brain is not just flesh and electricity. It's a doorway, a bridge, maybe even a trap. And what lies beyond that door may be stranger, more terrifying, and more infinite than the ST. Here's the haunting thought I'll leave you with: space is vast, yes. But it's out there. Silent, cold, distant. The brain, though, is inside you. Right now. Carrying secrets you'll never fully unlock. Every thought you've ever had, every dream you've ever chased, every fear you've ever felt, it all begins and ends inside this mysterious chamber. And maybe, just maybe, it's not only your chamber. Maybe it's connected to something bigger, something ancient, something that was here long before you, and will remain long after. That's the paradox. We think we're exploring the brain, but what if it's been exploring us all along? Now, I want to turn it over to you. Do you believe the brain is just a biological machine, or a receiver tuned into something beyond? Have you ever experienced a moment where your mind showed you something you couldn't explain? A dream, a vision, a voice, a déjà vu so strong it left you shaken? Drop your story in the comments. I'll be reading. And if this journey into the brain's darkest mysteries left you questioning reality, don't stop here. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and join me as we uncover more truths science can't explain. Because if the brain hides secrets darker than space, imagine what else the universe is keeping from us. Until next time, keep your eyes on the stars, but don't forget to question the shadows within.